Hey y'all, this is Growing the Word, and I want to encourage you with another video for our Biblical Truth series. And the last two videos have been on the biblical truth, the perspective of love, the biblical understanding of love, and the truth about it. And I want to make a third video on love here. I could go on with video and video after about love, and really, the whole Bible is a real love story. But I really want to just share this perspective of love, right? And I take this so seriously because this is so much of our walk as Christians is love. But I want to just dive right into it. So 1 John 3, and I'll read a couple verses here. 16, by this we know love, because he laid down his life for us. We also ought to lay down our lives for the brethren. But whoever has this world's goods and sees his brother in need and shuts up his heart from him, how does the love of God abide in him? My little children, let us not love in word or in tongue, but in deed and in truth. That is such a jab to so many hearts. And I don't know if that's because they aren't doing it. I don't know if it's because if they haven't ever seen it. I don't know. It could even bring a joy to people, and I think it ought to bring a joy to us, to the family of God, right, to the household of God. In the last video, we looked at the love perspective to God, from God, to Jesus, and then to the brethren, and then the concept of not loving the things of the world. Our love and our focus should be solely on God and Jesus, and then the brethren, right? And then the lost people, right? The two greatest commandments mention the act, the deed of love, not of apologizing or saying I'm sorry, but of a real love. And that's really the big reason why I'm making a third video on the biblical truth of love, is because it's so important to have in our lives. Paul says if we have all the faith in the world or all the knowledge in the world, but we don't have love, we're nothing. Think about that. You're nothing without love. Absolutely nothing. So many people, when they get saved, they're so zealous. They say, man, I will go to Africa. I'll live off next to nothing, have a near-death experience for Jesus. That's all good. That's all fine and dandy. I was that type of Christian, or, that was where my mindset was when I first got saved. But really, Jesus did the dying for us. Our job is to do the living for him. Now, he might call some of us to die for him, but for the most part of our life, while we're alive, we're called to live for him. And think about that. By this we know love, because he laid down his life for us. So we get to live in love because now we know it, because now we understand and believe that he died for us. This is some very serious stuff, because if you don't believe it, if you don't understand it, then you don't know love. I'm not saying it. That's what the Bible's saying. Verse 17. But whoever has the world's goods and sees his brother in need and shuts up his heart from him, how does the love of God abide in him? It's just a question. John is just asking a question, I think. How does the love of God abide in him? How can we come to understand and believe that God sent his only son to die for me, but I can't give up a loaf of bread? I can't give up 10 minutes of my time. I can't give up my vehicle or one of my vehicles or anything of the world's goods that I possess. How does the love of God abide in me if I, don't act like it, if I don't show it? Our actions really show what's on the inside. What comes out of the mouth is really an overflow of the heart. Our deeds are an overflow, really, of our belief. 18. My little children, let us not love in word or in tongue, but in deed and in truth. The deed shows the truth about our hearts. It shows us where our heart is. I'm not saying that, if you say no to someone borrowing something that, you're just automatically deemed as not saved or don't know the love of God or don't have the love of God. But it really shows where your heart is. And we should always, forever be moving closer to having more of a heart like Christ every day. I'm not saying to wake up tomorrow and literally sell everything and become homeless or move to Africa or whatever else. But just pray and ask the Lord to show you how to love. Show you in what ways to show others love. But it starts with that communion with the Lord. If you don't have a tight relationship with God, you're not going to just overflow with love. This is important because the first fruit of the Holy Spirit that list in Galatians when you get saved and when you get born again and the Spirit takes up residence in your house, he washes everything out, he gets rid of everything, and he brings in these fruit trees or fruit plants, right? And in that list, the first one to bear is love. And then joy, and then peace, right? But love is so important. It was the first in the list. It was the first in line. It was the first that came to Paul's mind when he wrote that, or the first one, the Spirit told him to write. Now, I'm not saying that that to go around and start eyeing your neighbors or anything like that. But let this first take place in your heart. Let this first start happening in your life. Just remember these words when someone says, hey, can I stop and think about what John is saying here? Talking about the things that Paul has said, I want to flip to Romans chapter 12. I want to read a couple verses here. Let love be without hypocrisy. Abhor what is evil. Cling to what is good. Cling to what is good. God is good. Be kindly affectionate to one another with brotherly love, in honor, giving preference to one another, meaning putting one another before yourself. Right? I'm going to make sure you eat before I eat. I'm going to make sure you have gas before I put gas in my car. Doesn't this just go against so many things that Christians believe today? I think it does. I think it does a lot. This is some very serious stuff here. We should cling to what is good. We should want to cling to what is good. So many people come up with excuses on things like, well, the Bible doesn't say I can't do X, Y, and Z, so I'm okay to do X, Y, and Z. I'm not saying that you're wrong, but I'm saying you're telling me the true intentions of your heart. And it shows a lack of love, right? We need to focus more on first loving our God with all of our heart, soul, mind, strength, with everything, with every bit of our being. And you could read the Bible, you could study the Bible at any time of the day, any way that you prefer to do it. But I like to do it in the morning before my day gets started, because I get to come before God first and get to learn more about Him and learn to love Him more and worship Him and pray to Him and commune with Him before I do anything else. And then when I go out, I pray that I could share the love that He gives me, the love that I see when I read the words of this book. When this book gets inside of me and changes me more and more every day, because this book is alive and it's active. It's got to be alive and active in you. I pray when I go outside or when I go do whatever, that I could share that love of God with everybody else, because those are the two greatest commandments. And if you notice, 1 John and Romans 12, both are really honing in on this brotherly love, on loving the people that are also saved, the people that have the same Spirit, the Spirit of God, who are also walking with God. In Ephesians 2, it talks about how we make up a household of God. Chapter 4 talks about how there's one body, one Spirit, one mind, right? One God, one Father. There's just one. It's not like we're distant cousins or twice removed. We're a close family. We're supposed to be a close family. And the more we love God, and the more that we let God's love flow through us, the closer we're going to get, because not only are we a family, but we're also living stones that Peter tells us, coming together to build a spiritual dwelling for God. And so we should be as close as stones, close as blocks that build a building. You can't even get a piece of paper through that. Right? That's how close we should be. Not because we have to, but because of the love of God. That should be dwelling in us so richly and pouring out of us so much that it just naturally happens. Everyone says, I don't have to do this, I don't have to do that. You're absolutely right. But if you are born again, God provides a new nature, a new way of thinking, a new way of living, a new heart. He takes out the hard heart, the stone, and He puts in a heart of flesh. One that's living, one that's beating, one that pumps the love of God through us. And sometimes we get so focused on every little thing else. We get so focused on how loud the music is at church, or if the pews are comfortable enough, or this or that I think a lot of things are just pulling us away from this true love. The enemy wants us to pull away from this true love. And so the reason why I bring this up is because the unbelievers should just see this unbelievable love in us, in this community of believers. And we should be putting others before us. Why? Because that's what Jesus did. And we ought to walk just as Jesus did. I want you to be praying for me, because I need to do that better too. I need to have more of that in my life. Now I'm sharing this with you because I want to encourage you. I want to be kindly affectionate to all the others. I want to put you before me. And if I could encourage you with this, you might be able to encourage somebody else with it. And it might be like an infection. So I'm praying that this spreads like a wildfire. I am. Grace and peace. Love you guys.